What are the strongest possible type combinations in Pokemon? I'm going to attempt to answer this today with my very own top 10 list. I will only be counting type combinations that actually exist in the game, because there are some great ones that they've never made yet, like Ground Fairy. So only type combinations that actually exist, and I will also be judging them based on Pokemon that actually have them and how those Pokemon have performed historically, with a focus on competitive singles. Now I'm starting things off with a hot take already, because for number 10 on my list I've gone with a type combination you probably wouldn't expect to land here, and that is the Ice-Ground type combination. Now admittedly this type combination has a lot of problems. Ice-Ground types have 5 different weaknesses to Fighting, Fire, Grass, Steel, and Water. They only have 1 resistance to Poison, and to make up for that they have some immunities. You're immune to electric type moves, the move Thunder Wave, and you're also immune to being frozen, as well as being immune to both Hail and Sandstorm chip damage. But the reason I think Ice-Ground is such a great type combination is because of its offensive potency. Ice and Ground are perfectly complementary offensive types. Ground is an amazing type on its own, other than the fact that it cannot hit flying types and it is resisted by grass types. These problems are both covered by Ice absolutely impeccably, as Ice hits grass, and flying types super effectively, and many more types as well. And usually if you have an amazing offensive dual type combo, you are sacrificing your defensive capabilities as a Pokemon completely. Look at somebody like Weavile. Weavile is absolutely dreadful defensively, it's its biggest drawback, but Ice-Ground, considering how good it is offensively, is also serviceable defensively. Mamoswine is the greatest example of an Ice-Ground type. It's pretty much the only one, unless you count Piloswine in early gens, but Mamoswine has solid competitive viability. In Gen 5 OU, Mamoswine is one of the best offensive threats in the game because of its impeccable stab combo and its ability to switch into the field decently for such an offensively threatening Pokemon. It has electric immunity and is neutral to a lot of types. Now Mamoswine is getting helped out by the fact that it has thick fat, but it's also relatively slow. You could easily imagine another Ice-Ground type Pokemon, if it came out, thriving in a similar fashion because it is a good type combo. Especially because you are neutral to rock, unlike other ice types. And as long as you have some ways to hit the field on a Pokemon with such a good offensive type combo as this, that is good enough in my eyes. So I actually think Ice-Ground is a very underrated type combination and one of the best in the game. Mamoswine proves that pretty well, I think, as it is really punching above its weight for an ice type. Ice types tend to be bad, and many ice types suffer from the problem where if they are viable, it's purely because of their offensive strengths and not any defensive merit whatsoever. Usually a viable ice type is something like Weavile, who is good offensively and dreadful defensively. But Mamoswine is kind of the only ice type who has ever broken that curse, as it is fairly functional defensively as well. Forgive me if this is a scorching take, but I think Ice-Ground is a great dual type combo. For number 9 on my list, I have gone with the Fighting Ghost type combination, which is kind of similar to Ice-Ground in many ways. Offensively, this is an incredibly complementary type combination. Ghost is a very strong neutral attacking type, threatening most things in the game for solid neutral damage. But the Pokemon that can thwart Ghost type attacks are normal types and dark types. Normal types are immune to Ghost, and dark types resist. This makes Fighting the perfect complementary type for Ghost, as it hits Dark and Normal super effectively. In the same vein, normal type attacks cannot hit Ghost, but Ghost hits Ghost super effectively. Ghost is super effective against itself. Unlike most other Ghost types, if you're a Fighting Ghost Pokemon, you are also neutral to Dark, which is a massive deal, because Dark type attacks are one of the greatest threats to Ghost types in the whole game. Now, Fighting Ghost types do suffer from 4 weaknesses, which is pretty bad. Weaknesses to Fairy, Flying, Ghost, and Psychic, but these are fairly manageable weaknesses, and you also have some pretty impressive defensive traits for such a good offensive typing. You have a ×4 resistance to Bug, which comes up all the time, as U-Turn is one of the most common attacks in competitive singles. You have a Poison resistance and a Rock resistance, which is also crucial in singles for entering the field and taking little from Stealth Rock. As a ghost fighting type, you are also immune to fighting type attacks and normal type attacks, as well as immune to being trapped. All the fantastic benefits of ghost typing. We have only seen 2 fighting ghost type Pokemon ever, those being Annihilape and Marshadow, and both of these Pokemon are banned to Ubers. That should tell you something about the excellence of this type combo. Now, to be fair, both of these Pokemon happen to have extremely broken signature moves, and that certainly helps, but I would not be surprised to see a Pokemon with this typing succeed in the future if it did exist, and these are certainly excellent showcases of the power of this typing. In fact, I might be underrating it a little bit. For number 8, I've chosen a typing that is admittedly very hard to evaluate. The normal ghost typing. By all accounts, this is a pretty incredible typing, and a direct upgrade from mono ghost type, because with this typing you are immune not only to ghost type attacks, you are immune to fighting type and normal type attacks as well. So these 2 types have perfectly covered each other's weaknesses, granting immunity to the types they were previously weak to. As a normal ghost type, you only have 1 weakness to dark, and you even have resistances to bug and poison. The reason it's a hard type to evaluate is because the only Pokemon in the game with this typing so far is Hisuian Zoroark. An okay Pokemon, who was briefly OU viable for a time, I recall, back in the day when this first released to Gen 9. But this Pokemon also has some issues. It is very frail, and although it has a lot of immunities, it doesn't have many resistances and is susceptible to general neutral damage. Although this typing has one of the highest potentials of any typing to be elite, there isn't really an example of a great Pokemon with this typing yet. To be fair, Hisuian Zoroark is a particularly frail Pokemon, and it does have competition as a ghost type with Gholdengo Dragapult, as OU is kind of crowded for ghost types. But still, it kind of reminds me of dark ghost typing before the existence of fairy, which in theory sounds amazing because it has no weaknesses and a lot of immunities, but in practice is kind of easy to beat with just big neutral damage. So it's interesting because the immunities of this typing are really outstanding, and you do only have 1 weakness, but your lack of resistances just makes you vulnerable to general damage, and it kind of requires that you have good defenses or other good healing options or ways to supplement that, meaning the typing is not 100% self-sufficient. And offensively, I don't think normal is providing you with much. You're not really using normal type attacks that often, as it's not a great offensive type. Perhaps I'm stupid on this one, but I think until we see a really good normal ghost type in the game, I'd probably rank the typing around here. For number 7 on my list, I've gone with Water Fairy typing, which I think is one of the most solid type combinations you can get, and one with a pretty excellent competitive track record. As a Water Fairy type, you only have 3 weaknesses to Electric Grass and Poison. I think Poison weakness is one of the easiest to cover, as Steel is completely immune and many types resist Poison. And of course, as a Fairy type, you're immune to Dragon, and this type combination grants significant amounts of resistances. Bug, Dark, Fighting, Fire, Ice, and Water all resisted, and these are amazing types to resist. All of these incredibly common and relevant offensive types that you see constantly. Water Fairy is also really good offensively. The typings are not that complementary really, but they're just both individually very solid and hit a lot of things, especially Fairy. There are multiple viable Water Fairy types in history. Azumarill, as soon as it became a Water Fairy type, felt significantly buffed, with Dragon immunity, Dark and Fighting resistant, granting it so many more opportunities for setup. Tapu Fini was of course an elite Pokemon in the Gen 7 and 8 games, and with the absence of Tapu Fini, Primarina has risen up to fill the spot once filled by Tapu Fini in this metagame. And I think Primarina is a testament to the excellence of this type combo because, yes, its stats are solid, but they're nothing spectacular. I think that the typing is doing a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to Primarina's viability. It's really the typing as the main selling point of using this Pokemon. Yes, it does have a good move pool, good special attack, and those are factors as well, but the typing, I think, is its most elite trait, and it is an extraordinarily good typing. But up next is a typing that I think is even better than that. For number 6 on my list, Steel Ghost type combination is absolutely outstanding. As a Steel Ghost type, you do have some unfortunate weaknesses. It's not all upside here. You are weak to Dark, Fire, Ghost, and Ground, and these are common types. But I think it is well worth these drawbacks for the sheer amount of incredible advantages that this type brings to the table. As a Steel Ghost type, you have an unbelievable 9 resistances. A ×4 resistant to Bug, Dragon resistance, Fairy resistance, Flying Grass, Ice, Psychic, Rock, and Steel resistance. You are also immune Fighting type attacks, Normal type attacks, and Poison type attacks. You are immune to being poisoned as a result of being a Steel type. You cannot be trapped, which is significant because of the presence of Magnet Pull. Magnet Pull Pokemon cannot trap you like they can other Steel types. And on top of that, you are immune to Sandstorm damage. Less relevant these days, but still an advantage worth pointing out. That is just an unbelievable amount of defensive benefit, and offensively you're no slouch either, as Steel feels great, threatening Fairy types, and doing good neutral damage to the resistances of Ghost. You can actually do a bit of damage to Dark types and Normal types with Steel type attacks. Just an absolutely elite combination of traits here, and I think every Ghost Steel type that has ever existed has been amazing. There's been Aegislash in Gen 6. I mean, Aegislash was great in more ways than just its typing, but the typing certainly helped. And of course, there's Goldengo in Gen 9, and this typing is one of its greatest advantages. I don't think anyone would argue with me here, saying Steel Ghost is absolutely incredible. Maybe you think it should be higher, but I actually believe there are some better typings to come. Up next is a rather rare type combination, but one that is undeniably elite, and that is the Dark Poison type combination. These types are unbelievably complementary to one another defensively. Dark types are weak to Fighting and Bug, and Fairy. Poison resists all of those, cancelling them out. Poison types are weak to Psychic. Dark grants an immunity to Psychic. They are so complementary that you end up with only a single weakness to the Ground type, one of the easiest types to cover with teammates, as Levitating and Flying type Pokemon are immune. The most famous Dark Poison type Pokemon is Alolan Muck, and while it is usually a low tier Pokemon, it has seen great competitive success on its typing alone, I think. This typing was such a buff that Alolan Muck, especially on a Monday, was a pretty outstanding response to the elite level Pokemon Tapu Lele in Gen 7. You are immune to Psychic, neutral to their Fairy damage, and you shrug off other coverage like Fighting and Fire, as well as threatening them super effectively with Poison type damage of your own. Certainly helped that you have such excellent tools like Knockoff, Pursuit, and that's a testament to the excellent offensive capabilities of Dark types. Offensively, these types are also great, threatening many things. I think considering how competitively solid Muck Alola is in multiple generations, despite pretty average stats, is a testament to the excellence of this typing. In Gen 5 OU, I have even seen Drapion be used, and this is before Fairy existed. If Drapion has competitive application because of Poison Dark typing, I think that says a lot, and this could easily be a trait on a potentially incredibly broken Pokemon in the future. Imagine a Poison Dark type with better stats than Muck. Not hard to imagine such a Pokemon being incredible. I have not even talked about all the immunities that Poison comes along with, as it grants complete immunity to being poisoned and is able to soak toxic spikes, removing them from the field. So yeah, I think that this is an absolutely outstanding type combination. For number 4 on the list, I have chosen one of the most famous type combinations in competitive history that you should be familiar with, the Steel Flying type combination. As a Steel Flying type, you are only weak to 2 types, Electric and Fire. You have an unbelievable 8 resistances to all very common types. ×4 Bug resistance, Dragon resistance, Fairy, Flying, ×4 Grass resistance, Normal resistance, Psychic resistance, and Steel resistance. And you even have significant immunities. You are immune to Ground, that's a massive one. Immune to Poison, immune to being poisoned with status effects, and you are immune to Sandstorm damage. Also, as a Flying type, you are immune to being affected by spikes, toxic spikes, or sticky web. Not that toxic spikes would affect you anyway, but goodness does this typing provide significant advantages. Steel Flying has always been known as an incredible physically defensive type combination because you resist most common physical attacks in the game, or you're at least neutral to them. Yes, there are electric type physical attacks and fire type physical attacks in the game, but they are not the most common physical types in the world. Skarmory is of course a famous competitive Pokemon that, thanks to this typing, has been an elite choice in multiple generations. In fact, every Pokemon with this typing has been great competitively. In Gen 7 there was Celesteela. In the very next generation, Gen 8, there was Corviknight. And I think Corviknight is a real testament to how excellent this typing is, because its stats are not that fantastic. They're solid, but nothing special. Its ability is Pressure. It has a pretty standard defensive and utility move pool. It's mostly the typing you're after here. And even in Gen 9, to this day, this typing is so good that Corviknight remains an OU ranked Pokemon, largely because of that typing. Primarily, I'd say. There's also defog access being more scarce, but the typing is doing serious heavy lifting. Even in Uber's formats, Steel Flying types are able to withstand some of the most powerful Pokemon in the game. Skarmory matches up well against certain Groudon sets, Rayquaza sets, etc. Up next is another famous one, the Bug-Steel type combination. And it's interesting that this is such an amazing type combination considering it contains one of the worst types in the game, Bug. Bug on its own is not very good, but combined with Steel, they complement each other so incredibly well, basically removing all of each other's weaknesses. Steel, weak to ground and fighting. Bug resists them, cancelling them out. Bug is weak to flying, rock. Steel cancels those out. And at the end of it, you're left with just a single weakness to fire, which is pretty easy to cover. Since water is very common on competitive teams, you're probably going to have a fire resist on your team. It's an incredibly easy weakness to cover. Yes, you are ×4 weak to fire, leaving you a bit vulnerable there. But still, you basically have a near perfect defensive combination here, with myriad resistances to show for it. You have a Bug, Dragon, Fairy, ×4 Grass, Ice, Normal, Psychic, and Steel resistances, plus immunities to Poison and Sandstorm damage. There are many examples of competitively incredible Bug-Steel types, including Scizor and Forretress. In fact, Scizor recently rose back up to OU status after quite some time. And I think this just shows that the key to having a great defensive typing is few weaknesses, one or two weaknesses, and just a bunch of resistances. That generally bodes well for your competitive viability, makes you a consistent choice. For number 2 on my list, admittedly I might be overrating this one, but I feel like Water Ground is just such a classically amazing defensive type combo. Yet another one with only one weakness to Grass, and I think that is one of the easiest weaknesses to cover. There's so many types resist Grass and can switch in on Grass very easily, making Water Ground a fantastic general defensive typing. Water Ground does not have as many resistances as Bug-Steel or Steel Flying. You are resistant to Fire, Poison, Rock, and Steel type damage. But you are immune to Electric, and I think Electric immunity comes up all the time, and being a water type immune to electric is significant, as most water types are threatened by electric. Electric immunity is, I think, an important box to tick, as otherwise electric is a pretty amazing type if you don't have some immunity to it on your team. So that tends to tick that box, blocking Volt Switch from getting too much value, or Pokemon like Tapu Koko or Regieleki just spamming electric moves until Kingdom Come. There are many examples of competitively amazing water ground types. Swampert in early generations. Quagsire is ever present as a stall king with a perfect typing to do the job of an unaware wall despite terrible stats. Gastrodon props up all the time, even Seismitoad has its day. Water Ground has enough resistances to have plenty of entry points. It's got that crucial immunity, which I think is a more valuable immunity than Scizor's immunity to poison or other Bug-Steel types' immunity to poison. That electric immunity is huge, and I think it's so easy for Water Ground types to just thrive defensively. On top of Water Ground being amazing types and kind of being complementary, as Water at least lets you do good neutral damage to flying types. And water types tend to have ice in their moveset. I think every water ground type has an ice move. That's sort of an external factor, but it's part of it. There's type identity to consider here. Water types tend to have ice coverage, which really helps this typing because you can hit grass types. And for number 1 on my list, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise, although I've seen some people contend with this idea, but I think that it's still got to be Steel Fairy as the number one most desirable type combination a Pokemon can have. As a Steel Fairy type, you only have 2 weaknesses to Fire and Ground. As we've talked about earlier, Ground is an easy one to cover by teammates, and so is Fire, because of just generally common fire resistances existing. And as a Steel Fairy type, you have an unbelievable 9 resistances, and they are crucial ones. Times 4 bug resistance is nice in a world where U-turn is so common. Dark and Fairy resistance. Dark and Fairy are such common types, and you have miscellaneous amazing resistances beyond that. Flying, Grass, Ice, Normal, Psychic, and Rock, as well as immunities to Dragon and to Poison, and Being Poisoned and Sandstorm damage. There are various competitively successful Steel Fairy types. The most famous, of course, is Zacian Crowned, one of the most powerful Pokemon in existence. There is Magiana, who is absolutely elite, and it is a defensive mainstay of Gen 7 OU and Gen 7 Ubers thanks to this typing, helping out even against meta-warping enemies like Xerneas and Yveltal. Klefki has seen competitive success, and of course there was Mega Mawile, one of the most powerful Mega forms. And that is my list, folks. There are some amazing typings that I didn't include. It's a tough world. It's a competitive world. There's no Water Steel on this list. There's no Ground Flying. It's contentious, and if you value those types more than I do, I wouldn't blame you. But this was my personal list of best type combinations in all of Pokemon. Do you agree or disagree? How would you order your own list? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you very much for watching.